Welcome everyone to a series of close readings of William Blake's The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. This was requested by a friend on the channel. I usually don't deal with Blake. Blake requires a different kind of close reading than, say, John Donne or Wordsworth. In my course on the art of close reading, I give you a typology of close reading, various kinds of readings that lend themselves, better or worse, to certain authors. Blake's poetry seems to be the kind of poetry that must be read in context with his entire corpus. The Marriage of Heaven and Hell is a great place to start because it's his early manifesto, published in 1793. Take a look here. It was published in Lambeth, where Blake had moved in 1791. This came to the press in 1793. He thought this was an important work for himself. He did all the illustrations himself. And all of these illustrations, by the way, you should always read Blake with the illustrations. Most copies of Blake don't have the illustrations reprinted. So here we are on the Library of Congress website. I'll post a link below so you can see the images yourselves. These were reproduced by Blake. He made copper plate etchings, and he had to draw them backwards, including the letters, because the copper plate etching, it would be etched, grooves would be made by acid, and then it would be pressed. It would be covered with ink, then pressed on paper, and then he would watercolor the rest in. So that means that each plate was meticulously produced in mirror image, meaning he had to write the words backwards order for it to come onto the paper itself. Very meticulous process. He's very careful about his imagery here. What do we have in this first image? You have to understand that he's trying to set up a universe with unity, a system of understanding. And in a way, he compares himself to Ptolemy or Copernicus. He's reinventing our understanding of the world, seeks to. The ideas of heaven and of hell are not the ideas that you're used to or that an Orthodox Christian would be used to, many of Blake's readers. Heaven for Blake and the angels, the good, that represents a kind of boring stasis where the unthinking subscribers of religion exist. Hell, its demons, the bad, is a state of revolution, of creativity, of even inspiration. And so the fires for Blake, the fires of hell for Blake are actually the fires of inspiration. He doesn't think of these as places as they're often depicted in Orthodox and historic Christianity. Instead, he believes that they are states of mind. Blake's universe is highly psychological, and in a lot of ways, as 19th and 20th century critics have explored, anticipates some of the theories of Freud, a psychological understanding of the universe, a psychological mysticism. It's strange. It's strange. And I'm not a Blakean, but I am a romanticist, and it's on that ground that I'll be providing some readings of The Marriage of Heaven and Hell for you today. Now let's zoom in on this image. We have to read the images too, not just the texts, and the relation of the images to the text. We have bending trees. Enclosing the words, the marriage of, we have two people walking, two figures. A woman in a dress, it looks like, and what I assume is a man. And then on the right hand of the panel, the image, we have the man kneeling over a figure fallen. It looks to me to be the same figures that were walking on the left hand of the page. So perhaps this is a man in mourning, and perhaps she's dead. Perhaps he's holding a lyre or holding his face within his hands. Something's going on here. It looks like conversation on this side, communion, and then separation. Almost as if on each side we have the states of innocence and experience. We explored in his book of that title. And then we have the earth. Here's the line of the earth, the ground. Beneath it, what's interesting, you can see the roots. The roots of these earthly trees are entangled right here in the fires, in the flames of hell. It's strange. And then from the flames, we have these, what look like exuberant, liberated figures flying into heaven, mostly in pairs, which is interesting because here's a pair, here's a couple, several couples, a group, And these are flying on their own but close together, so it's interesting that they seem to be liberated from hell, moving toward earth from underground. But it also echoes this sense of communion and conversation here, walking together down below, flying together out of the flames of hell. And then look down here at the final image, which really draws our attention with the whole plate. We have the marriage of heaven and hell depicted. We have the clouds, often associated with heaven, a figure sitting on it, reaching over and extending with arms enwrapped, a figure from hell, associated, represented here with the flames. Clouds, flames, going to be an important pair of images throughout the marriage of heaven and hell. The states already in this image are conflicting with the Orthodox understandings of these two places. This is not the hell by Dante, or the hell illustrated by Gustave Doré when he illustrated Dante's Inferno, which are really powerful images. He's turning upside down our concepts of heaven and hell and representing something to us. This is a total reinvention of the universe. Something to keep in mind. Possibly these are the flames of inspiration, but it also suggests that there is a possible liberation from hell, as Blake understands it. As you see these figures flying away from hell and into the right side of heaven, but possibly even back into earth. Two realities here. The earthly reality and that which is below the surface, the spiritual reality. Now, let me move into the argument and show you that poem. Here it is. Figures lounging, loafing. A figure reaching up, a female figure, reaching up a tree. And another figure reaching down, a vertical movement, which marks the right side of the page. Interesting, right side of the page on the cover panel was where heaven was occupied, the clouds of heaven. Perhaps it's very suggestive of the Garden of Eden. We have Satan tempting Eve. It's also very suggestive of the redemption, where Christ's tree is the one that connects heaven and earth. Here it is. Here's the argument. Now the text itself. Rintrah roars and shakes his fires in the burdened air. Hungry clouds swag on the deep. Once meek, and in the perilous path, the just man kept his course along the vale of death. Roses are planted where thorns grow, and on the barren heath sing the honey bees. Then the perilous path was planted, and a river, and a spring on every cliff and tomb, and on the bleached bones red clay brought forth, till the villain left the paths of ease to walk in perilous paths, and drive the just man into barren climes. Now the sneaking serpent walks in mild humility, and the just man rages in the wilds where lions roam. Rintrah roars and shakes his fires in the burdened air. Hungry clouds swag on the deep. Immediately, you might be thinking, who is Rintrah? But don't worry about it. Just let the text work on your imagination. Rintrah, in the whole corpus of Blake, tends to be a figure of prophecy, of wrath. He's often described as the fierce Rintrah. He is one of the four sons of Los, who appears elsewhere in this universe. He roars. Why? Rintrah roars. You can almost hear the roaring there in the name. And shakes his, you almost expect mane. It's like a lion, roars and shakes his fires, not mane, fires in the burdened air, the air itself, oppressed by what? Semicolon, next line, hungry clouds, swag, or weigh heavy on the deep. Imagery, if in the literary imagination, we might be thinking The lion, Rintrah, roars, shakes his fires. The fires don't seem to be pain, although it might be roaring in pain. It might be the fires of creativity. But the fires are shaked loose into the burdened air, the air burdened by the hungry clouds that swag, lay heavy on the deep. And the imagery there, the literary and religious imagery there in the second line, is suggestive of the Spirit of God hovering over the waters in the book of Genesis, or in Milton, in the first book of Paradise Lost. Imagery from Milton and the Hebrew prophets in Hebrew history, all tangled up in this reimagining of the universe. Clouds, of course, being associated with heaven by the cover page we saw. Okay, but these clouds are hungry, almost like they're ravenous, and they're oppressive, they're burdening the air. So already the fires are ambiguous. Are they a positive force? Is he roaring in pain, or are the fires a part of him? Because it says his fires. So the fires may not be bad, but the clouds of heaven seem bad, or the hungry clouds, rather. Reversal of good and evil here, or a redefinition of good and evil. Once meek and in a perilous path, the just man, already entering into the Hebrew mode of prophecy and poetry. You may think of the just man in Psalm 1. The presence of the Psalms are here because we even have here an echo of Psalm 23. Lo, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, the veil of death. The just man is keeping his course along the valley of death. Imagery from the Psalms. Roses are planted where thorns grow, and on the barren heath, the wild, sing the honeybees. Barren heath, wilderness. We're already thinking the just man in this perilous path is one that is outside of paradise, one who has lapsed. The fall has taken place, and the once meek in a perilous path, the just man, kept his course along. So there's this past condition in this present course, almost like after the fall. Then the perilous path was planted. A new change is introduced here. By this interval, a new verse, paragraph, a new period. Then the perilous path was planted in a river and a spring on every cliff and tomb. So the perilous path through this wilderness now is being decorated. A river and a spring on every cliff and tomb. Very suggestive even of Moses, book of Exodus, when he's leading the nation of Israel through the wilderness. One of the things he does is he makes water come from the cliff, from a rock. Okay, we get more prophetic imagery here. And on the bleached bones, red clay brought forth. Bleached bones. So we're thinking of Ezekiel in chapter 37, where God gives Ezekiel the vision of bones in the valley, which the angel of the Lord asks Ezekiel, do you think that these bones can live again? And Ezekiel says, Lord, thou knowest. And then the spirit of life is entered into the bones, and they rise up and have life. A picture of rebirth, prophecy of making new. And then red clay. The Hebrew word for Adam, Adama, means red clay. So when God creates Adam, it's out of red clay. It's a play on name. Adam brought forth. The red clay brought forth. So life is being breathed into the bleached bones. The perilous path is being planted. Springs are coming out of cliffs and tombs. It's as though the perilous path is becoming paradise. Till the villain left the paths of ease to walk in perilous paths and drive the just man into barren climes. So all this happened until the villain, we're thinking perhaps Satan, the villain left the paths of ease, different from the perilous paths, to walk in perilous paths. Why did he leave the paths of ease, this villain? To drive the just man into barren climes, into the wilderness. Now the sneaking serpent walks. Strange that the serpent would walk, because after the curse, the serpent was cursed to go on its belly, eating dust of the earth. Now the sneaking serpent walks in mild humility, calling back to the meek, once meek man. And the just man rages in the wilds where lions roam. And here we have the image of the lion again, which is recalling Rintrah, who's depicted like a lion. This energy of Rintrah, this demigod. So there's the just man now. Rintrah roars and shakes his fires in the burdened air, which is how we began. Hungry clouds swag on the deep. This is the setting of all that's happening. And again, you have to ask the question, what is the relation of the image to all of this? Looks like three figures here at ease. Perhaps this is the path of ease. And again, here we have the woman that we've seen reaching up, taking something from the hand of this person. And of course, she's active. Perhaps she represents the soul. Active in climbing the tree and reaching for something, while these are very inactive people. Paths of ease. Perhaps these are the pious Orthodox, the unthinking Orthodox in boring heaven. Perhaps these are the thorns. And she's been given grapes, maybe. Fruit of some kind. Again, very suggestive of Hebrew history. We have a displaced just man on a perilous path. And this path is becoming alive with plants, water, new life being breathed into old bones. But then we have the villain coming from the paths of ease to displace the just man from the perilous path. And the sneaking serpent is walking about. And the just man rages in the wild, where lions roam. Again, thinking of Satan, whom the New Testament describes as a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. And these images will be picked up later on in the book. So that's a brief introduction to this and the argument. And as I move on through these portions of the text, I may not get through all of them, but I'm going to highlight some of the most important ones so you can at least get a foothold into this very important text for Blake. Because if you're going to read Blake, I'd say more important than the Songs of Innocence and the Songs of Experience is this book, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. It will be a key to you as you go on through the works of Blake. Thanks for watching, and until next time.